Hey everyone, I'm Victor Dwyer, and I'm going to show you the ultimate guide in order to start your podcast and make it successful. Everything from doing your product research, all the way to getting your equipment, all the way up to monetizing it and making you successful. So let's dive right into it. And the first thing you have to do is find your niche. And I know you probably have heard that 1,000 times. The reason why it matters and it's so crucial is you have to figure out what is going to make you unique. What is going to make your podcast different from every other bullcrap podcast out there. And that is the niche that you need to appeal to. So if you're going to have a niche talking about how the Dallas Cowboys are awesome, you have a particular niche of a set group of people that are going to be interested in that podcast. And the more general you get, the less people are going to care about it. If I rather than calling it the Dallas Cowboy podcast, I call it the football podcast. The more general the podcast gets, the less people are actually going to care about it. So really focus on what niche, what is going to make you personally unique, and what is going to make this podcast unique, and how are you going to identify it with that particular niche. Once you identify that niche, it's also important to know what type of topics are going to be interesting to you and them. So a lot of YouTubers will talk about what is going to be interesting to your audience, but you also have to talk about what is going to be interesting to you. What are you generally going to care about? Because if it's interesting to you, there's going to be one other person in the world that's also going to be interested in it. It has to be interesting to you because it's going to allow you to develop more insights behind it, and you're going to be more motivated to actually starting your podcast and actually making it successful. First, start out what is going to be interesting to you and figure out how to communicate that in a way that's going to be interesting in other people. So if you love the Dallas Cowboys, I'm from Dallas, I'm from Texas, so I'm always going to bring up the Dallas Cowboys. I'm sorry, guys. But figure out what is going to be interesting to you, and then figure out, okay, there's probably one other person that's going to want to hear about the Dallas Cowboys because there's a lot of fans out there. Okay, now figure out how can you communicate to them in a way that's going to be engaging for them and where they want to understand and learn more about what you're doing. And that leads me to my next point of understanding your audience. You really have to understand what is going through their head. So the first thing I talked about is finding out what is interesting to you. And now you have to figure out how is this going to be interesting to your audience. So you have to understand your own psychology, saying, I want to start a Dallas Cowboy podcast. Awesome. I find that interesting because I love the Dallas Cowboys and I want to understand what their next strategies are on how they're going to be successful. Now you can take that same psychology and apply that to other people, saying, hey, there's probably other people that are interested in Dallas Cowboys and also want to see what is going to make them successful strategy wise. And that's what I'm going to talk about the podcast about. And then from there, just A/B test it. Talk to your friends. Talk to people that might be people. Get their thoughts on it. They're going to have ideas for you. And once you take in their ideas, they're going to be invested in your podcast. They're going to say, hey, dude, I'd love to listen to that. So get as many ideas as possible. I recommend 3 or more. And that way they're going to do insights. And so that way you're A/B testing and getting real audience testing of what's going to be interesting to them, because your first idea might not be the best. Let's be honest. And that's why it's really important to ask 3 of your friends and ask 3 potential people that might be good listeners. So always do some audience testing, even if it's just like replying to people on Reddit or replying to people in YouTube comments saying, hey, like, would this be interesting? And like any of like that would be amazing. Even if it's on this video saying, hey, is this a good idea? So that's the next thing I would do. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to go to YouTube. All I did was I typed in Dallas Cowboy podcast. From there, you can use vidIQ. It's a free Chrome extension, super easy to use. And you'll see this right panel here. And there's actually a lot of great insights that this has. Let me move myself over. Whoop, boom. Okay, so now that I'm over here, I'm a really fast runner apparently. So now from here, you'll be able to see a Dallas Cowboy podcast. And you'll be able to see the overall score is high, meaning that there's quite a bit of volume and very, very low competition. And so you'll be able to see like the average number of views added in the last 7 days and everything else like that. And you'll be able to see like how well optimized and things like that. It's really important to do some competitor research. The Dallas Cowboys are posting a lot and they're very well known on social media. And take a look at the shorts. How well are their shorts doing? Just do some competitor research. And this will give you some other ideas and insights to bring into your, and like, look at this. Look what this person's talking about. So this person's reviewing the video itself and saying, hey, what's working, what's not working. Taking these insights, taking all the competitor research, and from here, that way you have a lot of data to work with. And don't just stop with YouTube. Look at it on TikTok. See what people are doing on TikTok. Look at what people are doing on Instagram right now. These are all going to be strategies to help grow your podcast, because you're going to want to look at all these other social media ideas, because that podcast is going to be the long form content to eventually get to the short form content, because the short form is these shorts right here is going to be the real strategies to help grow your podcast. We'll get to that in a later video. But right now you have to realize that the shorts that you look at are going to be very critical to the podcast, because that's how you're going to grow it. And that brings me to my next point of the equipment. It's really, really important. The camera doesn't matter as much as the lighting. And I know I'm like one of the only people in the world to ever say that. You can have the best camera in the world, but if you don't have good lighting, everything else is garbage. So I highly recommend at least upgrading your visual to some type of DSLR. The way my setup works, like, screw it. So as I was like, might as well just bring it over. So this is actually my setup right here. So we're going to go through and I'm going to just like go completely authentic and just show you, like, I did not clean like anything. I'm just going to show you exactly what my setup looks like. And that way you can just see what's going on. This is the Tour de Victor. So you can see right here, this is my OBS setup here that I do everything that I'm like actually seeing myself on. This is my script that I'm working off right now. And then from here, this is my microphone that I have teed up to my desk, which goes to the USB that goes to my computer down there. And then these are my lights. You have the option between a shotgun mic. So this is a shotgun mic right here. And then this is a podcast mic. Shotgun mics, they stay out of the camera, so you don't see it actually in the camera. But if I did this, you would see it in the camera. So it depends on if you want a camera in your mic at all. These typically have better audio quality. So that's the difference between this and this right here. And the rest, these lights are actually pretty cheap. They're only like $150. So I have basically 4 lights, 2 umbrella lights, 2 point lights. From here, this part's actually pretty simple. So this is just a teleprompter. I don't use it very often, but this actually has my Sony a6400, which goes here. I have an external fan connected to it because it heats up like crazy because of the connector. And then this is overall what my setup looks like right here. Yeah, so don't judge me for all the mess. I did show you exactly what my setup looks like. So, and I'll have a link to all what my everything else is there. So that way you also know what that looks like. Thanks. And the next thing is planning out your podcast. So from the competitor research, you should have gotten some idea of what particular topics that you can talk about. Between talking with those 3 people and then also with the competitor research, they should have gave you some ideas of what particular topics to talk about. Let's say if I'm starting this Dallas Cowboy podcast, I realize this Lions game is a hot topic. First of all, it was a really good game. That Lions game was insane. That's the hot topic right now. Using that competitor research, I see that, hey, this is something that's going viral, that's being successful, and a lot of people are talking about it. This is something that I should talk about as a topic. The next thing is just figure out what you're interested in. When it comes down to interest, if you're like, oh my gosh, I can't find what people would be interested in, just start like with your first podcast. Don't overthink it. You really just need to get the actionability steps. You don't want to be caught in analysis paralysis. That's the one thing you don't want to get over. So you have to get over your fear of being on camera. You have to get over the fear of posting your content and getting over that fear of rejection. That's the hardest part. My first post on LinkedIn was saying, hey guys, I'm extremely scared of posting on LinkedIn. This is my first post. That was it. and like, these are the things that you're going to have to go through. You're going to be nervous. You're going to stutter. You're going to mess up. All those things are perfectly okay. Where I'm going with it, find a topic that you're somewhat interested in, do your first podcast, mess up, and everything will be okay. You have to convince your brain that saying, hey, I'm going to mess up here. The world's not going to end. And so that's what you have to convince your brain with your first podcast. Don't overthink it. Don't get caught in analysis paralysis. Just go do. The next thing when it comes down to planning out your content, you have to decide if you're going to do an impromptu, if you're going to have a guest on it. I highly recommend having a guest on the podcast because that's going to make it naturally just more interesting. When it's a conversation back and forth, even if it was a Dallas Cowboy podcast, the first 10 minutes could be about me talking about it. The next part could be bring on a guest that has a different opinion than I do, and we have an argument back and forth about why the Cowboys are amazing or why they suck. That could literally be the conversation, and that could be engaging enough. Adding a guest is going to be engaging. So when it comes down to like getting guests and things like that, you can ask the people that were naturally interested that you first asked beforehand, or you can reach out to other people on social media going through that. We're going to create a video on that in the future, how to particularly reach out to guests and get their email addresses and things like that. But just starting out, I would recommend just for your first episode, just to get something out there, to go through all the hurdles of how to record and things like that, so that way you're not stuck in the analysis paralysis. Then on future episodes, then you could start bringing on guests and things like that once you kind of have it all down. But we're going to make an episode on that, on how we source guests, how we schedule them, and everything else, so that way it'll be super easy for you. But for now, I just recommend just recording something and just getting something going. And the next part is having a script versus impromptu. It depends on what type of person you are. This video itself is completely unscripted. Like, there is like a general bullet points script that I have in this corner right here, but it's basically a lot of the things that just randomly come to my head. That's just the type of person I am. And usually I split it up, and if you're a person that loves chaos or a person that loves organization. If you're a person that loves organization, I highly recommend having a script. But if you're a person that loves chaos and loves just thinking of things on the spot, then impromptu is perfect for you. So it just depends on what type of person you are. I love the impromptu stuff because it makes me where I think fast, and I love that. And so that's what I stick with as my impromptu. And then just really fast things when it comes down to recording your podcast is don't use the word like, these are things that you're going to, like, natural human things. I am so bad at this. And you have to catch when you say the word you have to use the not use the word like. Catch all these things that are naturally in human speech. And once you rewatch your first podcast, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, all these things are wrong. Don't worry about it. I want you to post it even you know that it's bad, because I don't want you to be stuck in an endless perfectionist cycle, because that's what I was doing. And I was like always trying to make the content perfect and everything else, and I just needed to post. I just need to get rid of my fear of rejection of other people and saying it's okay if someone rejects me. Like, it's okay. I'm not gonna die. I'm not gonna die if someone rejects me. That's why you need to take your first bad podcast, post it anyway, and then you're gonna realize that your mind is gonna say, wow, nothing happened. The world didn't explode. I didn't die. Everything's going to be okay. And so that's what you have to have, the realization in your brain. So go through that. Don't worry about it too much. And then these are things that you're going to evolve. You're going to be better at communicating. You're going to not use the words likes and all these other things. You're going to be better at pausing when something happens. You're going to be better at tonality. I can talk like this the entire time and it'd be so boring, or I can talk like this, or I can talk like this, or I can fluctuate my tonality and make things a little bit more interesting. These are going to be things that you naturally learn over time when it comes down to it. And one other thing I want to mention is the difference between having a video and audio form podcast. So I highly recommend having a video on your podcast, because it's going to make things a lot more interesting when it comes down to recording for social media in the future and things like that. So I highly recommend having some type of visual aspect of what you're doing. And it's okay if you're scared to get on camera. I highly recommend conquering that. But if you are absolutely terrified and just like the thought of it makes you shake like this, like you get scared, don't worry about it. Just do the audio form. Start with that. But I really recommend conquering that fear of being on camera, because it is a skill. Once you're able to conquer that fear of being on camera, you're going to get a lot more valuable content out of it. So I highly recommend it in the future. And the next part is editing and production. When it comes down to the editing and production of it, you have a lot of options. When it comes down to doing any like video editing, things like that, I highly recommend Descript. That's what we use for all our podcasts. Is basically it will cut out all the ums and likes and all that good stuff and all the pauses, and basically make it where everything is combined and cut those out automatically. And it has like this text-based editor that is nice as well. So when it comes down to recording and editing the podcast, it makes it really nice. That's what I would recommend when it comes down to it. And then there's also an option to have like a studio recording option, where it basically will take your normal mic and make it better, essentially like using AI and things like that, and it will make your voice sound more podcast-like. Those are the ways that I would edit your podcast and cut the parts that you didn't like or the parts that you messed up on, and be able to edit it, and that way you can post it out on these other platforms. The next thing that I want to talk about is the publishing and hosting section of it. The whole point of finding of what hosting platforms, there's a lot of hosting platforms out, and all a hosting platform is, if you take the podcast, you upload it in one place, it will basically post it out to Spotify, post it out to Apple Music, it will just post it out to a ton of other places, so that way you don't have to upload it in 17 different spots. And that's really what a hosting platform is. So right now for our hosting platform, we use Buzzsprout. They have really good data and really good analytics that we like tracking through. We use all Buzzsprout to upload all our content into one, and then basically we're able to track out what particular content is doing well and what episodes are doing well. That's how we keep track of things, is why we use Buzzsprout as our hosting platform. So this is what the back end of Buzzsprout really looks like. You'll be able to see all the downloads, the duration of what episodes are doing well, and if you were able to just click in here, you'll be able to see stats. and you'll be able to see like how it's growing over time, where you're getting the most listens based if it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify. There's a lot of really cool analytics you'll be able to see, and even if it's based off of the particular places and locations and things like that. So that's why we use Buzzsprout, and they have this tool called Magic Mastering, where it'll actually increase the amount of the audio quality of the podcast as well, which we like. Next thing I want to bring out on the video editing piece is that there's this tool called Video AI. It will basically, you can take your 1 hour long podcasting and you can actually upload it to Video AI and it will cut it up for you. And so if you don't have a dedicated team of video editors, I highly recommend utilizing this, so that way you have a lot of short form content for the future. Because when it comes down to the promotional piece of actually getting a lot more people to listen to the podcast, let's be honest, a lot of people have the attention span of goldfish now. And so it's very important to have these short form pieces of content. And that's why I recommend having the visual piece of what you do. That way, once you create this short form type of content, you'll have a lot more success. So we'll use Video AI, and that way you'll have a lot of cut up clips there, and you should have some success on that side. And by the way, this is what Descript's video editor looks like. It's really, really cool. So like, let's just say if I messed up on this sentence right here, I would be able to exit this and it would actually cut that section out of the podcast. So it's very much of like a text-based visual video editor, and you'll be able to just have a lot of things that you can implement in here. And they have like really, really cool things where you can actually implement overdub, which is like AI to say certain parts that you may have messed up. They have a little video editor prompts down here where you can do a lot of the video edits on that side. So I highly recommend, if you were going to do any video edits on a podcast of the long form piece of content, I would definitely recommend using Descript for this side of things. And then the next thing we're going to show you of how to actually grow the podcast itself. We're going to show you exactly our process of how we would do it. So we have a team of video editors, so that makes it easy for us. But if we didn't, we would use Video AI. Video AI would get us all these different clips. So as you can see, there's all these different clips in here that we'd be able to utilize, and we'd be able to download these scripts or download these videos, these video clips that you can see here. And it looks something like that. From here, you would take these Video AI clips, and we use Vista Social to post out all our content calendar. So this is what the back end of our Vista Social looks like. So we'll take all the Video AI content, and then we'll upload it to Vista Social, and then it will have a content calendar that looks something like this on the back end. That way we can schedule out the posts, and you can do this to all the platforms. I recommend doing it on TikTok. I recommend doing it on YouTube Shorts. I recommend on Facebook Reels, Instagram, all these different platforms. Set them up. It takes less than like an hour to set them all up, and then connect it to Vista Social. And then from there, you'll be able to start posting out a lot more content. And I recommend adding some like generic captions in there just to, and that will help get a lot more traction and a lot more awareness of your podcast by building this on top of social media. The next way to grow your podcast is just think about what we call a power circle, meaning that think of your friends, think of your social media groups, think of Discord groups you're in, all these other things, and do it in an organic way. Don't be a douchebag about it, but say, hey guys, I'm working on this podcast. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. And because I'm just really trying to make it valuable and really engaging, I'd love to get your honest thoughts. Do it in that way. You're not necessarily like just promoting it. Say, hey guys, look at me. I'm so special. Oh my goodness. You're not doing that. You're just saying like, hey, this is something I'm trying to work on. This is something I'm trying to grow. I want to get your legitimate thoughts on it. Do that a bunch of times. Go through the reiteration process. And the faster you go and get that feedback process and that feedback loop in place, the faster you'll be able to start producing really good content. Like as soon as you'll start getting more and more feedback, you're going to optimize your podcast faster, make it more engaging, and make it where you just have a lot more successful podcasts. And we will make a future video on real tactical ways to help grow your podcast in the future and do a little bit more tactics. But right now you just need to figure out the fundamentals and then work off of that. And after you complete all the setup, you're going to have a few monetization strategies. So luckily Buzzsprout has monetization features within Buzzsprout where you can start making money within the ads itself. So that is an option. And then there's also personalized sponsorships where brands will actually reach out to you and say, hey, we want you to create a segment on us and put our ad and talk about us on your podcast. If you're familiar with Andrew Huberman, he talks about this and he recommends them personally, the brands personally, and the brands will pay him directly for those things. That's where a lot of your profit will come from, will be those direct brand partnerships. You'll be getting a little bit off the monetization on like the Buzzsprout and like these other things like YouTube and things like that, but it's very, very small. Nothing compared to the actual brand partnerships that will be built in over time. But you need to have a following, you need to have a dedicated niche, you need to have engagement. These are things that you're gonna have to build up. So I would just focus on the actual audience itself, providing value, figure out what's interesting to you, and then money will come along the way. But if you build the podcast with the intention of just making money off of it, I would not recommend going the podcast route. I would do it if it's genuinely interesting for you, and then that would be genuinely interesting for your audience. Because if you do it because of the money, people will be able to sniff it out. It's called commission breath, and people will be able to see that. And you have to come from a very authentic place, and it's very, very important. And that's basically it, guys. I showed you how to do the audience research. I showed you exactly what you need to set up for your podcast, on how to cut up the clips, how to do the post editing, and how to promote it, and to eventually get to the monetization part. Let us know if you have any other questions. And my goal is to add as much humanly value to you as possible. And I was very serious about that feedback. If you have any feedback that you want to give to me on how to be an effective communicator and saying, hey, Victor, if you can do this A, B, and C, this would be awesome. Just tell me that. And I would love to really understand what your guys' feedback as well. I practice what I preach. So please give me critiques, figure out how I can be better, and let's do it. And let's work at this as a team. I want to be able to help you create more effective podcasts, and I want to be able to communicate that more effectively. So let us know how we can help, and we'll catch you next time.